her mythologies. So Saša, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So hello everyone, I'm Saša Spačal. I'm a post-media artist, usually I explain, because I mix all sorts of media and I just go along with where the concept takes me. That's how the technology also comes along. I was invited here by Irena. She's a curator at KIBLIX, and thank you, Irena, for the invitation. So today I will first tell you a bit about the exhibition that happened at KIBLIX, and it's at the moment also exhibited in Drugo More in Rijeka in Croatia. So first of all, why mythologies? Why this kind of title? Of course, myko is a prefix for mushrooms and mythologies. It started all like that through my artworks, previous artworks, I researched a lot of technologies, a lot of biological beings and the connections between them and all the networks that happened. But then I started to think, I of course also came to a realization that what holds all of these together are basically stories and so particular mental concepts and mental knowledges, basically. So through the research and my residencies at several different laboratories in Berlin, Amsterdam, universities with scientists who research soil, but also fungi, I came across this sentence, all models are wrong, but some are useful. It was very, how would I say, a sentence that thought about the economical situation and system we live in, because everything needs to be useful in this situation. And this was a term that is used a lot by scientists because they need to make a lot of things useful, especially also for their financial reasons, for open calls. There is always a slot where they have to say why their research will be useful. But I started thinking then, like, what about if we change this? What about if we change the sentence and like end it with a different word, with like intuitive, empathic, or harmful, or even caring, or useless, or inclusive, or speculative? Especially speculative can be quite useful, and it's already, of course, also already used in science to speculate what will happen if we still go on in particular manner with certain developments, and then see if we want to go in that direction or not. So through this thinking, I came to see, of course, that a lot of metaphors are used to describe these models. Models are basically a larger, complex webs of metaphors. And one of the metaphors that is used by also popular press now, but the scientists, is Wood Wide Web for the networks of fungi. What you're looking at here in this image is actually the network of fungi with little dots, and these dots are spores of fungi. So it's quite an amazing, beautiful image, which was taken in at Vrije Universiteit Library of Dr. Toby Kiers. And what this, of course, these metaphors, when it came into the like it was spread in different literature, it was really useful, and still it's quite useful. So we can imagine that there is a world underneath the soil, and it's living, and everything is flowing in there, and it's connecting all the plants, and bacteria is also traveling along these lines, and it's like all this highway we have underground, and it's amazing. But there is one thing with this metaphor, this is really, really, really not so good. This is that it just treats the fungi as a wire. It's treated as like, because the web that we're doing, the internet, it has a wire, and you put something in it on one side, or click on it, and then it goes to the other side, and it comes there exactly when you send it, and this is it. But when the fungi get some nutrients from one plant somewhere on one side, it decides where it goes. Like the recent the studies in past years shown that nobody can predict where the nutrients will go, and so it has its own logic, it has its own world, it has its own kind of, some people even say, computation. So it's really important to think about what kind of metaphors we are using to describe these other beings, these non-humans that we're intertwined with. That I found very important. That's why I came to mycomythologies, and this is the work that was, this is actually from KIBLIX in Maribor, and this is the work, Mycomythologies, the Rapture is the title of the work. Actually what happens here is we made a network, the network that connects the nodule. The whole science fiction story behind is that there is a nodule in the network of the world, and it's a nodule which is not only biological, but it's also technological, so it's intertwined. And all of a sudden this nodule is getting new, it was updated. It was updated by the special protocol, the word for world is flow protocol. And since it was updated, all of a sudden the flow of new information is coming in, and new sentences in different languages. And one sentence keeps coming in, and it keeps like, it doesn't stop, it's an overflow. So, and these sentences we can't normal, because the normal that we had was precisely the problem. The sentence is not only in English or Slovene, but it's we asked a lot of people from all around the world to send us the sentence. So what actually happens in the installation, which is biomimetically programmed to be as a, how to say, micro internet. This means that we never know where the signal is going to travel, and the changes on different screens happen according to this logic. But the whole nodule in the central installation is made like that there are videos that were taken in the laboratory of Toby Kiers of the flow in Haifa, in Mycelia, and with the computer vision looking at these flows. And at some points where the nutrients insert the flow, the new sentence comes out. And this sentence changes not only the video in the center, but this changes the particular videos on the mycomythological screens, as they call them, the screens around it. There is also a microscope that looks at the mycelia and is part of the installation flowing in the air. But at the, of course, the whole installation is sort of a storytelling work, which has sort of, it's looping and it's changing all the time. And at a particular point, all the stories just gather into one wide flow, as which is to say is the flow where all the flows are together, and they're just flowing in one single story, but just as a process to tell that this is a processual thing that is not always the same, but all the time changing. So the sentence, of course, it's been around for some time. Actually, I find it through the help of a friend who's also here today, Spela, because it appeared first as a graffiti. Well, that's how we found it, is as a graffiti in the protests of in Hong Kong. So it was before COVID sentence. And while I was researching the origins, I found it that it's actually a synthesis of a lot of different protests around the world. I found it in Chile, I found it in other parts of South America, also some parts of New York, and of course Europe. So it's not a sentence that is just COVID-based, but it has a history from before. So this is just a brief explanation of the work, and now I would give of course, I'm open to any questions to explain further, or if something was not clear, I'd be happy to answer. And probably this also in the chat, if you're in Zoom.
Thank you very much, Saša. So now we would actually open up with the texts that are, even though written, for example, the carrier-bag theory of fiction is written in 1986 by Ursula le Guin, who was actually science fiction writer par excellence, in my opinion, because her words are really something, how to say, beyond. But the carrier theory of the fiction is an essay that took place in a book called The Dance at the Edge of the World. And as such, it actually talks about storytelling as a way to kind of be part of, as a way, I would now quote Donne Haraway, to live well and die well, let's say it like this. But basically this first text is talking more about writing, but again, how this writing is intertwined with the way we live and with the way we are in the world. And it can be connected not to the knowledge we kind of have now, but also to the knowledge we are gaining from the time before. So what is interesting about it is that it actually starts with mammoth and pastoral people, and with something that is so simple as food, and with something so simple as the wild seed of oats. So now I would actually like to invite, if you feel like, you can also contribute with your ideas and thoughts about the text. I mean, the floor is open, so if you feel like talking, you are welcome to, and if you feel like listening, you are also welcome to. But to say that it's not that Saša and me will be the ones speaking. So if there is some thoughts and ideas about the carrier-bag theory of fiction. Maybe Saša, you can move a little bit the slide. So if you don't want to share a thought at the moment, I will. So what I really like is that she does the first introduction with the food and the way the food was gathered and the way food was collected. And she clearly makes two ways of, she uses the food collecting basically as a metaphor to ways of writing and to ways of story, of making stories and telling stories about the world, where one of them has everything to do with conflict and aggression and kind of competition, while the other one has everything to do with taking care of somebody, bringing somebody, or kind of holding somebody. And these two streams are like coming tag along together, even though the one that is, you know, carrying wild oat seed is never really so amusing or interesting as, I don't know, killing them. And I think she's really making a nice this point, and how she brings it together. But what she is mentioning in this quote that you can read on the screen is like exactly that moment where human are like fully human with this backing, trusting, killing. So she wanted to be human too, but she never really to be that kind of human. So for her, she needed to have another kind of storyline to feel like a human at all. And first of all, of course, she discusses the issue there. And in that sense, she's going along with another story, a story that is not defined by a hero. And here she actually brings in this moment of a hero as somebody who is always present in the story, like a hero and an action. And hero always has a moment of killing. And for her, it is the story that she's never really interested in. And for that sense, I think that in Saša's work, I think it's very interesting that you kind of have this moment where the story is not really coming from human somehow, but the story rather comes from the mushrooms, basically from the non-human. So in that sense, I think this storytelling kind of brings in something completely different. Maybe you could mention also the moment when you are actually starting to write mythologies. Like, for example, for you, it was also not only the visual aspect, but you're also engaged in writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, I see mythology is coming from not only from fungi, like the how to say a meeting, a gathering of human fungi together. So, because for me to tell a story as a human, I need to also somehow be involved. So it's not just a fungi. Fungi can trigger, can teach, but I have to make it into my own practice or put it then into installation in a way so it tells this sentence that we can't go back to normal because normal was precisely the problem. So I see it like that. What was the other part of the question? Sorry.
The way you started to write stories, basically. So it was not only about telling the story through visual aspect, but also through really writing it.
Yeah, that was completely new for me. Yeah, how would I say it? It was almost unintentional. It was just some facts came together in a story that is not realized actually yet. It's going to be one of the next installations, but it was more like this sort of. For me, it's always writing as you get this little piece that sort of link together, and then all of a sudden you get a new world, and this new world opens up, and then the installation gets built. And so it's never very how they say ordered procedure or their recipe that to follow, but just like the things come together and just you see it's a story all of a sudden. But then of course it needs a lot of work still. You have to go through all the details, and through the details actually this new world comes out. So that's how I see it.
If anybody wants to share some thoughts. Becky, you want to maybe speak?
Hello. I can do. Sorry. No, just I wrote a long mini essay in the chat that I'll just relay. So yeah, it was just an overarching comment really from me about the profundity of this text and the beauty of and the history of the Westerns being these two objects. So you know, obviously the stick being this male story which has dominated our narrative, violence, control, kind of a lack of consent and imposing on right. And of course the phallus, and then the carrier bag representing the future that could have been, but also the future that might be to come, based on obviously carrying care, longer term thinking, acting preventatively, and kind of a realization of these more fluid bodies. So I love this text. I think everybody should read it because it's so potent in its simplicity. So yeah, thank you for sharing this as part of this wonderful assemblage of obviously texts and Saša's work.
Yeah, I also had the feeling that the world of carrier bag is been here since forever, but it doesn't have these loud stories, but it's here and it's like now slowly they're coming and emerging to more general public maybe. So I'm also very, very always with Ursula, just amazed how simply she can put things. It's so simply, like with one sentence, she was able to explain to me everything. Like they were, when she was talking about these prehistoric times where you had hunters and gatherers, and she said like, yeah, they were working only 15 hours a day, but then they had all this free time. So what did they do? They made stories, but the stories about just how you pick one berry and then another berry can be very boring. But to go and kill a mammoth, or even if that happens only once few months or something like in a long time, it's a better story to tell. So it's like, it's just a simple reasoning, but it makes sense and it sticks into your head forever. So
yeah.
Žiga, if you want to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm actually reading one of Ursula's books now. The name of the world is Wood, which actually sums up the debate that we started. And it actually really nicely shows the things we are talking about now, where Ursula is envisioning this, I would not say future, but like an alternative world where you have these people on another planet where they live really more like connected with nature, and where you have like opposite, also the opposite turn in society, because it's a matriarchat. The women are leading the society and the men are there like to dream and to make philosophy, and the women are leading the society and organizing everything, and they're just come for to counsel the men, but they can take the counsel or not. And then you have also another aspect, because now the humans from Earth are coming to colonize this world, and they see these people as like savages. You know, they enslave them. They see them as like really minor to our species, but they actually are in many senses more advanced, because they're linked to the nature, the similar as you said about mushrooms and the network, because they can feel the other tribes on the planet. They can feel what the forest is telling them. They can also dream about what is coming and what was in the past. So they live kind of in a world where there is no history, no violence, and then the earthlings come and bring violence to the world, and then everything starts to crash down and these two worlds collide. So I think she also envisioned this in her works, like alternative future or even alternative present, how we could live in maybe a more also egalitarian society, because I think she's also not only like being critical to gender, but also I think to class society. In all her work, it's like always the classes are really coming out also in this essay, I think. So kind of like Marxism, but in a really like literal or science fiction way. How could we more dissolve class society with changing to more caring and longer term thinking, as you said, you know. So this is really interesting, connecting nature and also society. How can it be organized as nature, not imposing our view on nature, but learning from nature, and maybe also in this taking care of our survival, because we're like on a brink of ecological devastation or war devastation. So everything comes together, and as you said, like in really simple really simple texts, really simple characters, like on 150 pages, she really explains this as like you would be reading 3 or 4 philosophical books or something. I don't know. She's really amazing in this sense.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think you have picked up upon some issues that we can very easily connect to Donne Haraway. But before going in that direction, I would also just like to mention, I would ask if somebody else wants to say something, add something to the discussion.
I would like to add something. The novel that Jessica was talking about, the word for word, this forest. It was also an inspiration for, partly an inspiration for the movie Avatar. And I was watching one interview between Donne Haraway and Ursula. And at some point, Donne Haraway commented in a way that, like, so that the ending of this, sorry, Giga, I hope you read the book till the end already, so I won't spoil it for you. But at the end, the Avatar wasn't able to sort of, they just packed the humans and sent them back, and everything was again perfect, like a perfect, harmonized, balanced society. But actually, Ursula in the Word for World, this forest, was very conscious of the fact that it's not possible to go back, because at the end, when in the last dialogue between the humans and the beings from the planet happens, they say, the human said, now you can go back to like the things were, but actually I'm sorry, I forgot how the beings were called, but it replied, no, but now we know how to kill each other. And that is actually what I found very, how do you say, profound in that, is that like we live in this damaged, violent world, and it's sort of, we need to damage and violent and sort of try to find good solutions for these kind of situations, not hope for something harmonic to suddenly appear, but like work through this and go through the trouble, like Donna says, and try to find our way to a better solution. So that's what I also like with Ursula's text. They're never, they are utopias, but in the same way, they're always very down to earth utopias, which is really strange. So, yeah.
I kind of like what you just mentioned, and exactly that moment of kind of having this kind of world and being aware of it. And I think Ursula actually was really talking a lot about it, but from this kind of science fiction perspective, talking about the issues of today to but in a way that it can be kind of assume or speculate on solutions. But maybe this is also a good way to kind of bring us to Donne Haraway text, because this is, I mean, Donne Haraway is a professor at Syracuse University, and she's teaching. I have to read this because I don't know it by heart. Wait a second. No. Okay. Anyway, it's like consciousness history, something like this. Yeah. It's completely different from this. Wait a second. Yeah, it's like she's teaching in history of consciousness department at University of California, Santa Cruz. And I found that quite interesting, like history of consciousness. Anyway, I found her text very interesting in a sense that what she is coming, like she's like picking up nicely in a theoretical way on all the troubles of the world today, in a sense like she's acknowledging where are we now in actually very concrete way, but also writing very nicely and at the same time playing with terms and with words. And this is maybe a beginning to try to go through all these aspects that she is actually bringing in. First of all, this idea of tentacular thinking, and then bringing all these kind of terms that are very like heavy in a sense of Anthropocene, Capitalocene, and Becky, maybe you would know how to pronounce Schutlocene, or I never know how to pronounce it properly.
Oh, it's a silent CH, so it's Thu, so it's Thulacene.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay.
I had to learn that the hard way.
Thank you very much. So it's Thulacene. And what is interesting is that she is actually reacting. Why not to call why Anthropocene is a problematic term as such? Because again, there is this moment of human who is like doing everything and kind of affecting everything around itself, but then again bringing the term of Capitalocene to actually again emphasize the economy, and she even mentions it further on to emphasize that the issue actually with the world today is exactly the paradigm economy we live in. And then she comes with a proposal, even though it is like a theoretical proposal, but then again, it is kind of concrete proposal where she actually acknowledges that the fact is that we cannot rely on human as such or human inventions to kind of get out of here, but rather that we need to start listening and paying attention to the knowledge that is already present in different kind of forms, that is not only human form. For example, how she mentions the coral reefs. Now I'm like jumping from here and there, but here you can also see her quote, the way she starts with tentacular thinking and why she wants to think with the spider to begin from. And Thulacene is actually coming from the thinking with spider and going along, learning rather from him than from anthropos or from a human being. So the first difficult question she is actually starting the text with and ending the text with is what happens when human exceptionalism and bounded individualism, those old selves of Western philosophy and political economies, become unthinkable in the best sciences, whether natural or social. Seriously unthinkable, not available to think with it. So I think this is very interesting because she kind of immediately says we cannot think with exceptionalism because we are not going nowhere with that. And then with individualism, there is no chance we are going to get anywhere. And for her, I mean, she's also mentioning this little bit further, that she says, I want to make a critical and joyful fuss about these matters. I want to stay with the trouble, as you already mentioned, Sasha, and the only way I know to do that is in generative joy, terror, and collective thinking. And I think this collective thinking is also this kind of moment when we gather together to think through texts. And even though it is only a text, but I think it is super important, especially in these kind of moments when we are all separated in different kind of spaces. So I think this moment is super relevant for thinking. So now I would actually open up the floor for further discussion on Donne Haraway, but you can also, if you wish, go back to Ursula or to Sasha's work.
It would be helpful to know kind of why this and actually the other text was selected, because obviously there are so many things to talk about. I mean, in this Donne Haraway text, could spend a day talking about it. It's so rich with ideas. But so it'd be really interesting to know from you and from Sasha kind of why you selected these two texts, just to give us a bit of context so we can respond specifically.
I don't know. Do you want to answer, Sasha, or will I answer?
But you chose them, so maybe.
Okay. So my way of thinking was that Ursula text, I had to choose it because it's really like text that really brings in this moment of storytelling, but how to tell a different kind of story. And in that sense, I think Sasha is doing that very well, both visually and textually, with kind of bringing in this kind of non-human entities and kind of saying this story about the network, which can be also interpreted in many different ways, kind of bringing something that is already happening in our focus and telling that story. While Donne Haraway, for me, it was more like kind of a step further, in a sense of that she also goes in line that storytelling is super important. And for her, storytelling is a way to kind of combat the problems of the world somehow as well. So in a sense, and I think this is maybe both what they are sharing in the way they are in both of their texts, is actually that they are not interested in this story of a hero. They are not interested, like Donne Haraway is not interested in Anthropocene, even though it is like really term that kind of took roots and everything, and she says she will also use it a little bit, but what she is interested in is actually to think in a different way than its already dominant way of thinking. And here I could like immediately go to this conclusion, but this kind of moment of the unfinished Thulacene must collect up to the trash of the Anthropocene, the extremism of the Capitalocene, and chipping and shedding and layering like a mad gardener, make a much hotter compost pile for still possible pasts, presents, and futures. And for me, it feels that she's giving the Thulacene as a proposal. How can we think differently? And how can we also revolt after all? Because what she is thinking I mean, she's thinking what she's writing. She's also like kind of calling for some kind of action. It's not that we will despair. This is not what we should do. It's more like thinking differently and acknowledging also everything that surrounds us. And also she's when she's mentioning Anthropocene in a critic, maybe Saša, you can put these 8 points.
Mm-hmm.
And the point 8
here.
The point 8 is, Anthropocene is a term most easily meaningful and usable by intellectuals, wealthy classes and regions. It is not an idiomatic term for climate, weather, land, care of country, or much else in great swaths of the world, especially but not only among indigenous peoples. So in that sense, she's also putting emphasis on this kind of what is the dominant story and what is the story that is not really told, or the story that is not visible or listened to. And I think this kind of her critique of Anthropocene is in its place, and especially in that sense that if something dominant, that doesn't mean that there are other stories that are equally important but left unheard. And also one of the aspects that she's bringing in is that the story that is big enough. So it's not the big story, but the big enough story to put it in the net bag. This is Donne Haraway is mentioning the net bag, and I kind of would read it actually in relation to the carrier bag of Ursula le Guin. Like in a sense, Donne Haraway bag is more like the theoretical bag where you put all these ideas and then how to think with all of them. While Ursula is basically quite, same in a way. It's also about ideas. It can be for food, but it can also be for ideas. Mm-hmm. So,
can I add something?
To me, please.
Ursula brings the bag, and then Donna sort of develops it theoretically. So what can we do with this bag? What is it possible to use it for? How to actually put all this? What are all these other beings who could be in the bag? And what I found really amusing, but this was still in Ursula's bag, is that if you put a hero in there, it looks really weird among the other beings because it's just like it's too small. So all of a sudden, also this big term is also with the term Anthropocene is very interesting. With Donna is she of course criticizes, and it makes so much. It's meaningful what she's saying, but at some point she also say, but it's useful. At some point, I feel like she's putting it, okay, we have to look at this word, it's useful, it's everywhere now, everybody sort of using it, but it's useful to use it in certain contexts, so we know what we're talking about. But in a way, she puts it in the bag, and she said it's one of the terms. So she puts other terms next to it. So it's like, okay, when we're using it, we should know the critique of it, but like it's one of the terms, so it's useful. So it's a sort of, I think they're like, Donna grew out of this bag basically. And maybe we can show this video that we prepared. She actually talks about this bag.
Sure, yeah.
Just a second. Do you see it? Yes? Yep. Let's start.
Your bag theory of fiction. So you get up and you go to the damn soggy oat patch in the rain. Wouldn't it be a good thing if you had something to put baby oo in, so you could pick the oats with both hands? A leaf, a gourd, a shell, a net, a bag, a sling, a sack, a bottle, a pot, a box, a container, a holder, a recipient. I would like to propose that that is a theory of technology. And I'd like to open up something about the technologies that we need to think about and build and remember, and that the questions of stories and technologies co-implicate each other.
So, yeah, what I find really interesting here is actually, for me, in a way, storytelling is a technology. It's just a mental technology to use. So that's what I would add to this. Maybe somebody else wants to add some thoughts.
If I may just add a very brief one. So I guess one of the big things about Donne Haraway is, and kind of other contemporaries at the moment, is this idea that kind of language is world shaping. So as well as the stories, that, you know, the words that we use are loaded with world making possibilities. And I think Donne Haraway is quite often quoted for, it matters what worlds, it matters what relations relate relations. And what is one of the many great things about her is that she will critique these words at the source. So before we even start telling the stories, kind of what words are we using? So the Thulacene is made up because it's kind of like, actually, if the Anthropocene is potentially something that's happened, it describes a historical, by nature, an epoch is a historical behemoth, whereas a Thulacene is something quite active. It's like, it's a way of being, being tentacular and interspecies. So and then she talks about humans. So actually, maybe humans should be humus, because then it relates us directly as a soil. It's innately interdependent because it's describing us as part of these composty beings. So specifically in this text, that idea of, actually, before we even start telling the stories, let's tackle the words at source, and if they don't exist, let's rethink or reimagine what those terms or carriers could be, and then let's make them active and living things that are interacting, things that are moldable, things that might change shape as we change shape. So yeah, that's what I read out of her very dense and rich and poetic words.
If somebody else wants to share, otherwise, I mean, if there are, do you have any? I mean, if you don't have any thoughts at the moment, or if you don't want to say anything, then maybe we should slowly conclude. What do you think, Saša?
Yeah, if you want to. Okay.
Yeah, I think because now it's almost 7 o'clock, and I think we went through it. I think there is also so much place for further discussion, because to go through Donne Haraway's text, it's really like, there is actually so many aspects, and just footnotes give the text in their own, and it's all about really bringing and asking for a further read and a further discussion. But I think maybe if there is no comments at the moment, or any other thoughts, maybe it would be good then just to bring our reading circle to the end, because yeah, I think 1 hour of Zoom is I think it's quite a proper time, actually. What do you think?
Yeah, okay. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much, Saša. And it was really nice to have you all here, even though it is like a little bit distant spaced. But thank you very much for being with us and for listening and sharing some thoughts.